So based on the potential leaks, it's seeming like we could be shaping up for an anniversary in Dead by Daylight that's similar to the Ghostface anniversary. And that's in the sense that there could be a version of Vecna brought in that's from different license holders than the most popular license holders for this IP. Would those actually be different license holders? We're going to talk about that in this video, and if they are different license holders, Matthew Cote's talked about how that can really complicate things.
The contract negotiations, we've managed to make sure to mention that we would like to do other outfits. We have to work with the license holders to try to find variations and things that we can do. And if they're open to it, that's absolutely amazing. You have to understand that these are all different licenses and they might not all be owned by the same people, and people might not like each other. So it's not necessarily an easy thing for us to have all of these be available.
Hey everyone, it's Schmuggles. Don't mind my hair woke up. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this. I'm also live on Twitch right now streaming Dead by Daylight. Link for that in the description below. We kind of have more potential evidence for this Vecna D&D collaboration that could be happening for the anniversary for Dead by Daylight. This article came out how Hasbro's Chris Cox is steering the toy company into games. This is Chris Cox right here. He's the CEO of Hasbro, and as we know, Wizards of the Coast is a subsidiary of Hasbro. GamesBeat asked this question right here. At an industry level, there's this fear that maybe the big companies aren't doing new IP anymore. That's one of the consequences of this layoff funk that's happening. Now nobody wants to take risks. Going with established IP is the safe route for the time being. Players worry that there's not new much IP coming. GamesBeat also followed up and talked about unleashing existing IP. And Cox talked about how on the video game side, we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into becoming a new video game publisher. And as you can see right here, he said, but we're also investing in new net IP, investing in creators who have a history. Based on the information that we have, people think that he could be talking about Behavior Interactive in Dead by Daylight. Behavior has a long-lasting history of licensing third-party IPs into Dead by Daylight, which we all are very much aware of. So if these potential leaks are all true and we actually have a Vecna D&D version coming in for the anniversary, could a Stranger Things version of Vecna also come in with the anniversary as well? Would the Stranger Things version of Vecna technically be different from the Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons Vecna? Or does Wizards of the Coast have licensing power for all versions of Vecna? Somebody actually asked this online, can I use the name Vecna for a different character in my own work? And actually this article goes over the fact that you cannot copyright a name. What does copyright protect? Copyright is a form of intellectual property law that protects original works of authorship, including literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works such as poetry, novels, movies, songs, computer software, and architecture. Copyright does not protect facts, ideas, systems, or methods of operation. So the only way the copyright holder in the Vecna character can have a claim is if your character is substantially similar. Do note that there are two well-known Vecnas, the D&D one and the Stranger Things one. As noted, copyright does not extend to the name itself, but the whole of the character. So it does seem like there are actually two different versions of Vecna out there. Wizards of the Coast owns the Dungeons & Dragons version of Vecna, and Netflix owns the Stranger Things version of Vecna. Both of these entities seem to have full reign over licensing power for those IPs. And I think the fact that Dead by Daylight licensed in the Demogorgon, which is also a D&D character, solely through Netflix also proves this point. Wizards of the Coast was not at all related to that deal when they brought Stranger Things into Dead by Daylight, so Netflix fully owns that version of the Demogorgon. And this must be because the Demogorgon, the name itself, cannot be copyrighted. Netflix created a version of the creature named Demogorgon that was distinct enough for it to actually be its own property. So since we've established that there's two different versions of Vecna out there, what are the odds that they could get the Stranger Things version of Vecna along with this chapter? We know that Dungeons & Dragons is a huge part of the Stranger Things show. And here's what the Duffer Brothers had to say about Dungeons & Dragons as well.
So we come up with a monster that we want in whatever particular season we're doing. Yeah. You know, in this case, the Vecna character. And then we're flipping through the D&D monster manuals, looking for, okay, what would they be referencing here? And in this case, it was Vecna, who really wasn't a character until the 90s, so we cheated a little bit, but we thought Eddie is so advanced, and the idea of Vecna did exist, but that's why you have the kids react in the way they do.
So it seems like the Duffer Brothers really do love Dungeons & Dragons, but do they actually have a relationship with the license holders? Like, would the license holders be willing to work with the Duffer Brothers and Behavior Interactive to bring in two different versions of Vecna for the anniversary?
Absolutely not.
Netflix and Wizards of the Coast have actually had a lot of different collaborations through Stranger Things. The Dungeons & Dragons History of Vecna, the new Stranger Things villain. Prior to the release of Season 4 of Stranger Things, Perkins did not know how much Stranger Things Vecna would be like the D&D baddie. He explains that Netflix reached out to Wizards of the Coast and that D&D's franchise team worked with them to help provide the inspiration and answer any questions. As part of this, the franchise team commissioned new concept art for Vecna and put a story guide together that they could give to Netflix for them to use or not. In other other words, the Duffer Brothers had access to Vecna's D&D lore, so it's up to them on how much they wanted to use it. So it seems like Netflix was very secretive about how they were going to incorporate Vecna into season 4 of Stranger Things, but they got full permission from Wizards of the Coast to use as much of the D&D franchise and lore as they wanted to. So Matthew Cote saying that the same properties owned by different license holders might have license holders that don't necessarily like each other really isn't the case between Netflix and Wizards of the Coast, who own different versions of Vecna. Regardless of the fidelity of Stranger Things' Vecna, it's clear why the show wanted to borrow his name, because Perkins counts him as one of D&D's most iconic villains, one who has endured through all the many editions of the game. If I were to get my list of top 3 villains, it would be Vecna, who is the iconic Lich, Strahd, who is the iconic vampire, and probably the Demogorgon, who is the iconic demon lord, he says. That comment right there from Perkins could actually be the basis for speculation that that iconic vampire Strahd could be a featured character in season 5 of Stranger Things. But that's a different story. The point is, Wizards of the Coast and the Duffer Brothers really do get along.
When we realized Vecna was not around in the 80s, but it was too good to pass up.
It was too good to pass up, and some of it also is the name, which is it feels so ominous and scary. And we wanted it to be just like the Demogorgon is. We wanted it to be a monster that is infamous in the D&D world. We wanted it to have that weight to it. It needed abilities that lined up in some way with our monster.
There is also this collaboration right here. Shout out to Makeup Mistress from my Twitch community for bringing this to my attention. There's a Funko Pop release that had both versions of Vecna in a single package. And we can tell clearly that this is the Stranger Things version of Vecna right here, and this is the D&D version right here. It's coming in one set. So these two different license holders have collaborated on Vecna products before, and this is actually perfect evidence of this right here. So if the anniversary chapter is D&D Vecna, would they be willing to do the same for this as well?
As we go along, as we've done this more and more, we now understand the things that we should be discussing when we enter into a new agreement, and we try to explain to the license holder what they had to gain from doing that, because people will love being able to see the character under many different, variations. They'll be able to have their own version. They have more, they're more committed when you can get the really cool outfit. So
there's also another collaboration between Wizards of the Coast and Netflix through the game Magic the Gathering. If you Google Magic the Gathering, it's actually listed as an online video game, and you can see that Wizards of the Coast are the publishers as well as the developers. On their website, they sort of reference the fact that this is actually an online game and a tabletop game, so this is a game that you can play in person with cards as well as just online as well. But take a look at this. Magic the Gathering announces a new Stranger Things secret lair using new design models. Magic the Gathering is planning a secret lair drop featuring new cards styled after the popular Netflix series Stranger Things. The premium release, which does not yet have a date, will be the first to use a new design model that publisher Wizards of the Coast hopes will garner more support for the trading card game's player base. And this Secret Lair drop series is something that's been released, so it's official. This collaboration went through with the Netflix version of Stranger Things as well as Wizards of the Coast on their game. This was a card package that featured a bunch of different things. I saw that there was a Mind Flayer, which is part of the Netflix show. It also featured 11 as a playable character in this card game. Lucas is a playable character. Max the Daredevil is a playable character. We have Will the Wise, as well as this reference to season 1 of Stranger Things right here. Hawkins National Laboratory is a playable card in this set. It really is cool to see all of these things. These are definitely things from the Netflix show, and from the licensing side here, we can see that this is also a Wizards of the Coast property right here on the bottom of the screen. So this is just plain and simple evidence right here that pretty much Wizards of the Coast and Netflix have collaborated many times in the past. So would they be willing to do the same for the anniversary chapter? Recall on November 6, 2023, when Stranger Things returned to Dead by Daylight, on that FAQ, there was the question, will new Stranger Things content come to the game? And they said, we do not have any additional Stranger Things content to announce at this time. And this was something that was a little bit strange because Fortnite also announced the return of Stranger Things content for Stranger Things Day in their game, but they included new playable content in the game as well. For whatever reason, Dead by Daylight did not do the same. Now it's making me start to wonder, was there a larger plan to actually release more Stranger Things content with this anniversary? We'd have a D&D Vecna base kit killer. If Netflix is willing to collaborate, which we've seen so much evidence of their collaboration history, we'd have the Stranger Things version of Vecna as a legendary skin. And would they introduce new skins for Stranger Things characters along with the anniversary to go along with this D&D theme? We could see the leader of the Hellfire Club, a fan favorite in season 4, Eddie Munson, join as a legendary skin for Steve. This is something that would make a lot of sense because the Hellfire Club is a D&D club in the Stranger Things season 4. It would go along perfectly with this D&D chapter theme. If they'd be bringing in the Stranger Things version of Vecna as a skin, I also think it makes sense to bring in 11 as well as a legendary skin on Nancy. It's actually not really clear if there's a new map coming in with the anniversary chapter or not, but if the entire chapter is D&D themed, I wonder if it'd just be a D&D style style map. I think all of this information put together, the potential leaks, what the CEO of Hasbro said in that interview, the number of collaborations we've seen between Wizards of the Coast and Netflix in the past, really puts together a compelling case for why Vecna from Stranger Things could actually be a part of this anniversary. And remember, all of this is actually not something that's confirmed by Behavior Interactive, so we'll have to wait and see what new information comes out about this. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this. And a reminder, I'm also live on Twitch right now streaming Dead by Daylight, link for that in the description below. That does it for this video. Goodbye.